Welcome to the Retirement Income Show with me here, Tim Sparks, and this show is sponsored by the Retirement Income Source Sparks Financial Group here in the heart of the Bluegrass, Lexington, Kentucky. This show is committed on how to increase one's income in retirement. Now, when I say income, it's not cash flow, which is the most predominant way to actually get income today. It's cash flow management. I'm talking about real income and just keeping and maintaining your principal. And so everyone that's listening today, and as a matter of fact, we've been doing this show now, looks like it's been a good 4+ years, and we get a lot of responses, each and every week. I did not know when I started talking about investing for income exactly how many people are tuned in to a radio show like what we have here. I know people listen to Dave Ramsey and other talk show hosts, but I didn't know exactly how well it was going to be received. And one thing I have found out is my goal was to make sure that every one of you understood what it meant to invest for income. And also, I wrote a book. I wrote a book based on my experiences of what works and most importantly what doesn't work in retirement. And the name of the book that comes out here in about 6 or 7 weeks is called The Retirement Income Shift. And that shift is when you go into retirement, you want to be successful in retirement just like it was when you accumulated wealth, so that way you were prepared for retirement. And so the subtitle of that book is How to Get the Most Mileage Out of Your Money. Well, the reason I like the income message is exactly that, just exactly like I just stated, getting the most mileage out of your money. And if y'all probably heard me talk about a car, a Prius I owned many years ago versus a truck I owned when gas prices were over $4 a gallon. This, I want to say, is around 2005. So whenever I bought the car, there was a dramatic difference on how much I was spending per gallon compared to the truck. Now, I love truck and I prefer to drive a truck. I wish the truck would have equally I would have gotten the same amount of mileage out of every $4 that I spent, but I did not. And so that's what I mean by getting the most mileage out of your money. You got to do something differently in order to be able to do that. And the run-of-the-mill, the type of advice today, which keep in mind, people, I've been on that side of the fence for many years. And so what I have found is that type of plan really did not sit well with me. To me, I felt like that, if I'm wrong, if my crystal ball is wrong, it didn't matter how much I reduced risk or used income-based instruments based on cash flow management. I knew that spending principal in the long run was a recipe for a disastrous retirement. And a lot of people may play that down. And, if you have the wind at your back and, the markets are going up in value over, 5, 8, 10 years in a row, then, you haven't really seen that, even though you're really spending principal all the way through those each month by month of those retirement spending years. And that's, to me, I just don't think that, why in the world would I want to take that unnecessary risk? And I did say unnecessary risk. Because a lot of times, if we can fix something without taking the unnecessary risk, then why not go ahead and fix it? That way, just in case you didn't have the wind at your back, you've got plan B. Now, plan B, there's a lot of plan Bs out there when it comes to retirement planning. You can Google retirement planning and then you're going to have a plethora of information out there, maybe YouTube's videos. And by the way, I have my own YouTube channel. And so I also do the same thing. And it's just to educate the public. And it's our philosophy. But at the end of the day, you have to realize there's a difference between income and growth. because they make up two components of how you get a return on your money. But the thing is, one of those components, growth, doesn't always cooperate. You don't always get growth. There's going to be times that you're going to also get loss. And so if a retirement plan is built on growth, then there's going to be times of disappointment. There's going to be times you're going to make changes, and when you probably shouldn't have made change. I was just talking to a guy the other day. He said, in 2020, he went to a much more conservative type of fund management. It was more like a money market, so to speak, because he was just fearful of the months ahead. And sure enough, he was worried that the markets were going to take a downturn, and rightfully so. He had his own reasons, and unfortunately, the markets didn't. So if he would have kept it invested, he would have had another couple $100,000. You see, I'm not here to stop the upside, the extra $200,000 you could have made. I'm more concerned about losing. When you lose money, how are you going to get income in the downside and still be able to maintain the course, and just in case I'm wrong and the markets go up? You see, I can be wrong and still get income. You still get the growth. You can be wrong and not get the growth, and you have to sell shares. And when you sell shares, that's a recipe for a retirement that's going to eventually, your wealth is going to start diminishing over time, because you cannot make it back up. So you may be thinking, what do you mean? How can I get, kill two birds with one stone? I talked about this on the last week's radio show, but of course this show is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be talking about a different spin on income and why it's important not to give up ownership. And how you do that is you invest for income in case you're right or wrong. It doesn't really matter if you're right or wrong. Heads you win, tails you lose. The question is how do you do it? And so I got a commission report I'm going to get in your hand called Investing for Income while still being invested in stocks and hoping you go up in value at the same time. And this commission report can be yours if you call 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we will mail this or email this, whichever you prefer. Again, if you call 888-930-1080, and you will get the commission report called Investing for Income while still in the stock market. How do you do that? How do you get income? How do you have plan B and plan A at the same time? You see, growth is icing on the cake, but you need income always, right? Because that's the problem you need to solve. So you're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source, and this is Tim Sparks, and today we're talking about an important question. Why give up ownership? Now, when I say why give up ownership, you need to understand why it's important and why am I making this statement of ownership. What is ownership? Well, let's first break it down in how you acquired ownership, and you did it by buying shares throughout your working years. And we call that accumulation. It doesn't really matter. You're acquiring shares, and that is ownership. And you're acquiring shares, and hopefully you were in the stock market, and usually people use mutual funds to and try to be diversified at the same time, and that makes a lot of sense. And you did that by depositing money in your 401ks and your retirement plans. Whatever that may be, it could have been in non-retirement plans. But keep in mind, you're on the side of accumulating wealth, so all you're doing is just buying shares. You're buying shares sometimes at low prices, other times at high prices. It doesn't matter. You're buying and acquiring ownership, and that's extremely important. Matter of fact, all you have to do is remain the discipline of just continuing to contribute, and you will continue to buy shares. So if you even look at your statement 1 year to the next and you're still accumulating wealth, tell me how many shares you bought within 1 year to the next. But when you get into retirement, or if you're already in retirement, just look at your statement. Count the shares. It's thousands of them. It looks like, it's probably equates to granules of salt in the salt shakers. There's so many of them, and that is ownership, people. But when you go heading into retirement, doesn't it make sense to maintain that ownership? Do you want to know how to maintain that ownership? Well, first of all, just like I say in my book, the retirement income shift, now you're on the income side. Now, if you don't need income, people, this show's probably not for you, but most people we meet with or call in our show need income, or they wouldn't have any other reason to call. Or they're wanting to know if what they're doing is okay. One of the two. But to maintain ownership, you got to be able to invest in vehicles that actually allow you to maintain ownership. You got to shift to those vehicles. And now you got to get an increase in the income side of the equation. And now what I mean by the equation is you got total return equals I plus G. And so for the growing, when you're accumulating shares and you're buying them at various prices, the G was the bigger focus, the growth, the capital appreciation. That's why your investments grew exponentially over time. And I don't know if you noticed this, the first $100,000 may have taken you 10 years to get. And then whenever you get 200,000, 400,000, before you know it, 400,000 to double 100% to 800,000, it's even easier. Accumulation gets easier and easier because of how many shares you own, and over time capital appreciation, and plus the markets are also fueling that growth. So if you want to learn more about income first methods, in other words, why is it so important to maintain ownership? In other words, you got to reprogram yourself in understanding how investing works. And I got an excellent book called Retirement Income Story, written by CFA Dave Scranton. And it shows you how interest and dividends will catapult your wealth even better, and even give you a real preservation on your wealth, because you're not selling ownership and giving up ownership like most people do when they go in retirement. And you're going to learn these I first methods, these interest and dividend methods, and why it's important to switch gears when you're in retirement. And I got a free copy for the first 5 callers of today's retirement income source by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail this book out to you if you're one of the first 5 callers. Free, no obligation book, 888-930-1080. Today we're talking about how to maintain ownership. And ownership, why it's so important, and how you can preserve your wealth and also combat inflation. So here, when we come back, we're going to talk about how people acquire shares. And we're going to kind of break that down. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source of Tim Sparks. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source of Tim Sparks, your host. And our show is sponsored by Sparks Financial Group right here in the heart of the Bluegrass, Lexington, Kentucky. And today we're talking about why should you give up ownership in retirement? And we're going to give a valid argument why giving up ownership is a recipe for a possible diminishing retirement as you get older and older in retirement. The last thing you want to do is to be stressed out, right? Because sometimes people don't understand why their balances decrease, and a lot of the reasons why it decreased because people don't understand how the mechanics of money works, especially when it comes to taking money out of your portfolio. You want to know, where's it coming from? You didn't really care where it came from when you were accumulating wealth, but you should care when it comes to distributing wealth, because they're totally two different things are going on in your retirement. And today, unfortunately, our industry is still using cash flow management and running different risk analysis, et cetera, like looking back at different algorithms of how the market went up and down and sideways, like using a Monte Carlo analysis. And as long as they get within reason, as long as they helped you to see that, and that they're just doing their due diligence, so that way you feel comfortable and they feel comfortable as well, Their whole goal is to acquire your assets and get them under management. There's nothing wrong with that. We all do that. That's what I do. I acquire assets to be able to manage people's money. The only difference is you're having to give up ownership in that type of retirement scenario. And that's what we want to be able to avoid. So that's their philosophy. I know that philosophy because I used to be a part of that philosophy. So if I'm going to help people surrender shares each and every month, think about it. If you got a 30-year plan, there's 360 months, just like a 30-year mortgage. Each and every month, you're spending so much in shares, you're selling shares, unbeknownst to you, regardless of what you know or don't know, and you're doing this about every time you take out $10, for example, $3 is coming from income, $7's coming from principal. I kind of sit down and put a pen to it, and that's about what I've seen. Now think about it for a moment. Why in the world would anybody want to spend that kind of principal each and every month? Because see, whenever you're accumulating wealth, you're accumulating shares. So your shares are fluctuating all the way up, and so it's going up in value. But when you're distributing wealth, you're no longer accumulating shares at all, not unless you're not taking any income from your portfolio. That's the only way you can accumulate shares. And the reason you're accumulating shares because you got dividends coming in, and the dividends are reinvesting them and helping you to accumulate shares. But when people go into retirement, and if they need, let's just say $50,000 on $1 million portfolio, and all that money is invested in stock-based mutual funds, then I can tell you right now, $40,000 of that is going to come from selling of shares. That's what I mean by giving up ownership. I mean, I don't know about you, but that's not plans that I want for my retirement and for my family, because that's giving up a lot of shares. And all of that, I give up ownership, and I give up ownership, I can never ever get that money back. Did you know that's your retirement plan for the next 360 months or 30 years? That's a long time to continue to surrender ownership. Matter of fact, I've always wondered if it will take you shorter to actually go broke than it did when you started broke until you accumulated wealth. I've always wondered that, and I'm going to think about it for a moment. If we can fix that problem, then why in the world would I want to actually use a Monte Carlo analysis or something like that, and hoping that the wind is going to be at your back? I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know what the markets are going to do, and if the crystal ball works, that's fine. But the crystal ball may not work. You got to be prepared for plan B, because after all, you need income. And it could be a very disappointing and very stressful retirement when you get 10 or 15 years into it and you only got half your money left. At the first break, I talked about how people accumulate wealth, and in order to understand why maintain ownership, you did it all during your working years, and what caused that was how you was contributing, and by kind of somewhat by accident, but not by accident because you intentionally were investing, but because that money you were setting aside was buying shares. And so you're accumulating shares. It's the same thing. And you get 40 years down the road, and voila, you got $1 million, $2 million, whatever the amount that you have saved, and you did that by those contributions. Those contributions were buying shares. So the example that I would like to give you to help you to see that, and this is a good thing, keep in mind you're still working, you got income coming in, you don't need distributions yet, is you're spending, let's just say $100 out of your paycheck. So if you take $100 out of your paycheck, for example, it goes to Fidelity or whoever your custodian is for your 401ks, and let's just say it's $10 a share. Well, $10 a share on that $100 means you bought 10 shares of ownership. Also, now this is hypothetical. Also, you got $1 per share as a dividend. So in other words, you got $10 of dividends as well as $100 value here. And again, that's totally hypothetically speaking, just to help you to understand this. The following month, let's just stop there. The share prices dropped to $5 instead of $10 a month before. The good news is you're accumulating, so you got to buy twice as many shares the second year or the second month versus the first month. So that means you got 20 shares. And when you bought 20 shares, you also doubled up on how much in dividends you got. So instead of you getting 10 shares round one with $10, you got 20 shares round two with $20 in dividends. So in other words, now you got $30 in dividends coming in, but the share price between the two months in this scenario dropped 25%, because you had $100 worth month one. Month two, you guys still had $100 worth, but the total combined, because the first set of shares dropped 50%, now you're at $150. Now, I'm not trying to make you dizzy here, but you got a value of $150. That took a loss, but you still also got $30 in dividends. So the dividends doesn't change, but if you start spending those shares, you'll start losing the dividends. So you got to keep in mind, whenever you go to retirement, you're no longer acquiring shares. Now you're having to sell shares and give up ownership. That's the whole point of this show, and I hope it's going to be a little redundancy for some of you, but the whole point of this is to help people to be able to understand why giving up ownership is a recipe for a diminishing retirement portfolio in the long run. And I got a commission report I want to get in your hand called the formula for the most successful retirement is TR equals I plus G. Great, excellent commission report helps you to break down the difference between income and growth, how they both work for you and to your advantage while you're accumulating wealth, how separate and divide and conquer them will help you to get through your retirement and maintain your wealth. And this commission report can be yours if you call 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail this or email it, whichever you prefer. 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks, and today we're talking about why would anybody give up ownership? Ownership meaning you're acquiring shares. And when you acquired shares, you did it by accumulating wealth and because you were contributing, your employer was contributing to your plan, and you were accumulating all these shares. What you don't want to do when you go into retirement is start surrendering that shares, because when you start surrendering shares, you start diminishing your portfolio in the long run. Because if you think about it for a moment, the markets can go up and they can go down. It doesn't really matter. You're still surrendering shares. And so, we do a retirement risk analysis for people to help them to determine, are they selling shares in retirement? And does that make sense for them to do that? You got to keep in mind, this is your money, not my money. I know what I'm going to do with my money and for our family, but this is your money, what you want to do for your family, and what philosophy you want for that way you can retire the way you've hoped to retire. But the one thing I will tell you, you cannot will the markets to go up. The markets do not cooperate, and not only that, the stock market doesn't matter if it goes up or down. It does not have a heartbeat. Only you have a heartbeat, and you're the one that has to deal with the stresses in case the markets doesn't cooperate. And so I can tell you right now, I've never met anybody that likes to lose money. And and it doesn't matter how aggressive they are. As we all know, Warren Buffett accumulated wealth by investing in stocks. And as we know, stocks are more riskier than bonds. But stocks are also more rewarding than bonds. So in that essence, he was totally fine investing, but he invested for dividend stocks. When you read how he built his wealth, not because even if you listen to some of the talk shows where they have him talk about how he accumulate wealth, and I don't know what it is, but people don't really pay attention to the golden nuggets of what he's saying. He says, I did it by investing I wanted money coming in constantly, flowing in, regardless of what the markets can do. He understood, and we all should know, that the markets fluctuate. So what he meant is, I've always got plan B in motion. And plan B also minimizes the need for income, because plan B is income, and that's what he's talking about. But what I find people doing is when they go into retirement, they're now, instead of accumulating wealth and buying shares, now they're selling shares. That's the whole point. That means you're giving up ownership. But if you want to learn more of how to be able to minimize selling ownership and just maintaining ownership, then I got a great book I'd like for you to be able to read. In other words, this is the way you transition to a successful retirement plan. And that is, the name of the book is Retirement Income Store by David Scranton, a CFA. And I got a free copy for the first 5 callers of today's Retirement Income Source by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. This book can be yours if you're one of the first 5 callers. Free, no obligation book, 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source with Tim Sparks. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Retirement Income Source of Tim Sparks, and today we're talking about why give up ownership. Our show is sponsored by Sparks Financial Group right here in the heart of the Bluegrass, Lexington, Kentucky. So why is it important to keep ownership? Now I look at ownership kind of like in this scenario. Now this is a perfect scenario. When I say that, because we don't know, right? I mean, our plans are, none of us are, we don't know when we're going to pass, but most of us assume we're going to live average life expectancy. For men, that's age 86, 50% chance. For women, that's age 88, 50% chance. So let's just assume that one of you make it to age 90. Well, if you retire at age 65, then that's 25 years. So, and let's just say both husband and wife is only a few months apart and are both 65 years old to keep this scenario. Keep in mind, if your spouse is 5 or 10 years younger or slightly older than that, then it just depends. If they're younger, that means the money's got to last also for their lifetime, not just for one and not the other, because at the end of the day, you got 2 people here that the retirement plan is supposed to be for. And so what I have found when it comes to maintaining ownership, you don't want to sell shares. Here's my argument. The last 5 years of our life is typically what? It's either we're in the real slow-go mode or we're in the no-go mode, and we got some issues, right? We got conditions with our health, and we don't know how long we're going to live at this point. We may even go into a nursing home. We may even need home health care. So that one reason is the reason I want to maintain ownership. But here's the sad news. Most of the people that are listening to this show here today are giving up ownership monthly and called monthly paychecks. Why? Because you're having to sell shares. And when you're doing it, and think about it for a moment, imagine it's a 25-year plan, last 5 years. For 20 years, all you've been doing is selling shares. And the older you get throughout the 20 years, in other words, year 10, you sell more shares than you did at year 1. Why? Because it's multiplying on itself. Your value of your shares, even though they may be going up, they're going up on what you have left, not on what you spent, because you already spent them. You had to have shares in order to be able to create income, because you are on a growth formula type program, and so therefore you're having to surrender shares. You're not on an income plan program. Because see, if you were on income, you would still have that ownership of those shares 20 years into retirement. And so that's the reason why you want to be able to preserve your money. You want to preserve it, and there's a good reason why you want to preserve it, is that not just for that, but also you need an inflation hedge. It's hard to regain shares that you're losing on a monthly basis and try to hope that the new shares that the other shares that you are spending are going to go up in value. See, that's what has to happen. And what I mean is, let's just say you got 1,000 shares of the S&P 500 index fund, and 1 month you may sell 5 shares, next month you may sell 7 shares because the market went down. But what you're doing is each and every month you're spending shares. You may have a good quality fund, but what's causing that is because the fund doesn't have enough dividends in it, so therefore you're having to sell shares. And so that's what I mean by surrendering ownership. And over time, you run the risk of running out of money, because now you got to hope that what you have left, let's just say you started off at the first of the year 1,000 shares. Now at the end of the year in that particular fund, and again, I'm just speaking hypothetically, you got 950 shares. So the 50 shares you lost is gone. It's out the window. You can't go back, and it's just like taxes. You can't go back to the IRS and get your taxes back. You cannot go back and get those shares back, because you had to have income, and you didn't get enough income because of the type of investment tool you're using. Keep in mind, people, it's the investment tools that's causing you to erode your ownership. And most mutual funds and most exchange traded funds, there is some out there that pay dividends to the level that you want in order to be able to generate the income you need. And the reason why you want to spend income and get the income up is because it gives you a better inflation hedge, plus it allows you to preserve. Now we have different variations of plans that we do for clients depending on what the clients are looking for. If a client comes in and they want a conservative type portfolio where they don't really want to take a lot of risk, then there is a way to generate income in that type of portfolio to be able to get them what they're looking for, because they don't like the idea of fluctuations in their balances. But most people are okay with some fluctuations because they want growth. They know they have to take some risk to get that growth. So what we do is we use, instead of mutual funds, we use individual stocks that pay dividends at typically about 3 times more than what they were getting with their actual mutual funds that had stocks in them. And so that makes a lot more sense to them. And while their portfolios are still gradually growing while they're taking the income. So it's more of a moderate-like type portfolio. I mean, right now I have a client that's got about 2.7 mil. This particular couple only needs about $150,000 a year in income, and so we got 1.2, 1.3 in more of fixed and guaranteed interest instruments, because that's what they liked. And then we got the other 1.5 in more growth and income instruments that are still paying income. When people come to us, the whole farm is put to work, not just some, but all the farm is put to work. And so the reason why, because I want money continuing to come in, and in this case, we're carving off about half the portfolio and providing fixed interest income and the return of the principal, and then the other part is more growth and income, but they're still getting another $70,000 a year in dividends that they don't even need. So the $70,000 allows them to accumulate and to be a capitalist while they're in retirement. That's the reason why that type of strategy worked well with this particular couple. All while maintaining ownership. And maintaining ownership gives you that edge. So whenever they get 15 to 20 years into retirement, they still have their resources. And I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, if I can, get 15, 20 years down the road and I still got my resources I started with, I don't know about you, I think that was a pretty good strategy, because I'm going to be honest with you, most people are not going to be able to see that result unless they invest for income. So if this makes sense to you, if you want to know more about income first methods, in other words, methods that help you to transition into the retirement where you're getting income only and then grow second, and you're wanting to know how you can do it conservative, moderately, or moderately aggressively, then I got a great commission report I'm going to get in your hand called The Introduction to the Universe of Income Financial Strategies. In other words, income generating financial strategies. I can tell you right now, these strategies will actually triple or quadruple the amount of income you're getting right now, which is a problem you have to solve anyway. And this commission report can be yours if you call 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080, and we'll mail it or email it, whichever you prefer. Again, that's 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks, and today we are talking about why would you give up ownership? Well, there's a lot of negative, even just listening to that, should be enough to be able to take note for what I'm actually saying here on the radio today. And I try to come up with stuff as where I come up with the information to generate these radio shows, just kind of different ways to be able to explain why investing for income is so important in retirement. So to me, to do that, you got to be able, if you want to minimize giving up ownership, in other words, you don't want to sell shares, then you're going to have to find the right tools that will provide you income. It's all about income in retirement for most of the people that actually hire our services. And so we share with them the philosophy that we know that works. And not only that, we have income specialists that actually provides it for our clients. We have CFAs, financial analysts. See, an analyst is different from a financial advisor. A financial advisor is actually hoping that the strategies that they put you in are going to work. Doesn't mean they're tried and true, they're going to work. They can look back and say everything works, but so can you. But when you're going forward, that's the problem. That's where I'm a little bit more concerned about. Why? Because analyst sees the inside scoop of Wall Street, and so they see what you should own, and not only that, if they specialize in income, they're going to be looking at the instruments that actually pay income, and will continually to pay income going forward, because that's what it's all about. You've got retirement is a long-term liability, and what I mean by that right there, when it comes to income, you got to provide income for the rest of your life. So that's a long-term liability. Most people are using short-term liabilities like money markets, but for the first time are actually paying a little bit of interest right now, and they think that those type of instruments are actually going to be able to help them to segue into retirement. I hate to tell you, but that is only temporary. Short-term instruments will not provide you a long-term plan. Our clients are getting income each and every month. They want income because they want to maintain their ownership. They don't want those shares to be sold. It's not perfect. There's nothing perfect. But I can tell you right now, what's imperfect is selling shares and hoping perfectly that the markets will cooperate. We all know that don't always happen. So keep in mind, we acquire, when I talk about TR equals I plus G, G is growth, capital appreciation. And looking back over some, even my own, I wouldn't call mistakes, kind of regrets that I did. I owned several pieces of real estate, had about $1 million in real estate back in 2003. And that's when I started acquiring some real estate, because I kind of like my dad, I started buying real estate and so forth. And in 2003, I bought a property down in Florida. I paid $80,000 for it. When I say $80,000, that was quite a bit of money back then, and it was on the water and so forth. And today it's worth $300,000. Well, guess what? I got rid of it, still made a little bit of profit in 2011. I got rid of it because I wasn't spending a lot of time there in Florida like I wanted to. Used to, we would go down 3 or 4 weeks in the winter time and spend time down there, and then we would come back. But the busier I got to spend less and less time. So at the end of the day, kind of looking back, I wished I just held on to the place just for the capital appreciation. Because I could have sold it and made a $220,000 profit. Yes, I would have had some capital gains, big deal. It's all about what you make and not what you, and a lot of people are more concerned about, I got to pay capital gains. No, if you're paying capital gains, that means you're doing something right. And also in 2006, I also acquired some land that I actually was going to build a house on, chose not to do it, but I wished I'd held on to it, because that land has already doubled in value, and I could have made an additional $200,000 on it. Now looking back, if you think about it for a moment, that's $400,000 that I could have actually acquired in wealth, and I did that because I would have held on to it. That's how you do that. But if I sold it any time in between, then I gave up ownership, and I gave up that benefit. But my point is this: if I would have just, with exclusion of the land here, if I would have just rented this property out, I could have been able to maintain it while having income at the same time. That's how you keep ownership, people. You keep ownership by maintaining those shares, and you can do that. There is a way of doing that, but if you're using mutual funds and exchange traded funds, your strategies are a hope and a prayer. You don't know whether the markets are going to cooperate or not, and at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to be more disappointed because you didn't understand when it comes to total return equals I plus G, that I should be the focus. You're trying to be successful in retirement, then focus on what's going to get you through retirement, and that is the I, the interest and dividend. So if you want to learn more on income first methods, I want to get a book in your hand written by Dave Scranton, the CFA, financial analyst, the Retirement Income Store. It talks about strategies where you can have your cake and eat it too. You don't know where the markets are going. Some of you are hoping the markets go up. Then invest in stocks that pay dividends. That way, in case you're wrong, at least you still get dividends because you still need income. And this book can be yours if you're one of the first 5 callers of today's Retirement Income Source by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail this to you if you're one of the first 5 callers, free, no obligation book, 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source with Tim Sparks. I'll be right back. Welcome to the Retirement Income Source. You're tuned in to Sparks Financial Group. This is Tim Sparks, and we are talking today about why you give up ownership and why people are doing it today and don't even know they're giving up ownership. And what I mean by giving up ownership is you're selling shares to come up with income. I mean, there's different ways that people give up ownership, and there's different ways or philosophies out there that show people how to minimize this by using things like bucket strategy and so forth. I know people that will put so much in cash, and then they say, well, just in case the markets go down, I can sit here and spend my cash in my money market account here at Fidelity, for example. And if I'm spending $100,000 a year, maybe for 3 years, and I'm going to have $300,000 in cash and that gives the markets time to be able to cooperate and come back on what you have left. Well, I've explained that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It's just the sometimes it does not work is what concerns to me, because at the end of the day, you had to sell shares to come up with that $300,000 you put in that account. And if the market doesn't recover that $300,000 while you're in, and it does happen, the market goes down during that 3-year period, it may take longer. I mean, there's no law that says the market can stay down for quite a while, right? I mean, if you look at 2013, it went up and down twice with 50 and 60% losses. And so what if it took 13 years to recover? I mean, if you think about it, just if it happened once in the last 20 plus years, tells you what going forward, it can do it again. I mean, you have to always be prepared just in case. Philosophically, can you go through that, and what kind of plan does it make sense in case that does happen? See, you're trying to rule out all the problems that could occur in retirement, not just somewhat, but all the way. In other words, you do that. Instead of putting money in cash, you put that money into a more of an interest and dividend like portfolio. Because, by the way, people, in 2013, if you were in stocks that paid dividends, you would have came out of that unscathed if you were living on the dividend. You can't do that if you're spending principal, because every portfolio I've looked at is spending principal. Anywhere between 50 to 60 to sometimes 70% of their income coming out monthly is coming from principal. I don't know about you, but I hate to tell you, if you were to see some of these portfolios I've seen that actually went through those periods, and how that I've seen the balances reduced by 2/3 in hoping the markets will go back. Because see, they started out successful, and then it become very disappointing and very troublesome to the people that we worked with that came in, that went through this right here and was hired our services after the fact, and they wished they had known about the income first method, focusing on income first. Because people, at the end of the day, it's all about being successful. It doesn't matter how you do it, just get it done. If you want to get through a 2013 like era, and be able to have dividends and not touch your principal, maintain your ownership, that means you don't sell shares, then you are going to come out in the long run a lot further ahead than everybody else that ignores selling shares and thinking the markets are going to cooperate just while they're in retirement. Because at the end of the day, you want to be successful in retirement. To do that, you got to invest for income. So I got a commission report I want to get in your hands called Investing for Income While in the Stock Market. Yes, you can actually have stocks that pay income with potential growth at the same time. You also, I hate to tell you this, you can get a lot of dividend paying stocks but have very little growth. Or you can hire an analyst that can be able to help you get more growth and the same income. And I don't know about you, if I'm going to be in the stock market, I want both. And to be honest with you people, there's a lot of work goes in to actually picking the companies. I would say kind of somewhat cherry picking. I mean, think about it for a moment. If you do something for a real long time, the analyst that we have that manages our stocks for our clients and pays dividends has been doing it for 30 years. If you do something for a real long time, you'd be pretty good, right? I had a client in the other day that was talking about, they're going to have to probably be opened up and have a four-way bypass, and they were talking about the surgeon that's going to actually do this and how impeccable the record this guy had and has been doing it for almost 30 years. Very similar to what our analyst was. And so people get really good at things, some people don't. And so at the end of the day, it really, really takes a person that, just like Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is making headway in the WNBA. And the biggest reason why is because she works hard at it. And whenever it comes to dividend paying stock, it's the same thing. And people it does take a specialized education and knowledge and wisdom and experience to be able to be really good at picking stocks, getting growth and income at the same time. Doesn't mean you always get growth. Don't worry about it. That's the way stocks are. Just live on the income. In the long run, you're more than likely going to go up in value. Just like I said earlier, why does it make sense and when does it make sense to even spend principal? Well, you don't want to in your go-go years. You want to minimize that as much as possible because you're going to need it in your latter years. And you need it for your latter years for several reasons. Inflation, because inflation is going up, and also you need it in case you need health care. So keep that in mind. We've had people come in with some unusual withdrawal rates, more than 4%. And that means they're going to have to invest for income if they even want to maintain their portfolio, because it's, even the studies have shown anytime you go above about 3.5%, you're throwing caution to the wind. And so when we find people comes in, I had a couple come in that needs to take out $60,000 on $1 million. Well, the most income in a diversified portfolio, because they still want potential growth, is they're going to get about $45,000 to $50,000. And with that being said, that's better than where they were coming from, because $45,000 to $50,000 means they're going to spend a little bit of principal. But they're only just a few years away that they don't even need to spend that kind of income because they got Social Security coming in, because these people are kind of frugal anyway when it comes to spending. And so, again, that's with, somebody that needs a higher withdrawal rate, then you're going to really, really want to have income to be able to minimize that and preserve your wealth. But one thing I'm going to share with you, Let's just say you have 1,000 shares. Year one, you spent 20 shares. Next year, you put 10. Markets went up. Following year, you spent 30. Markets went down. Every year, that's all you're doing. You're just eroding your shares. You see, you have to, the portfolio has, when it rebounds, what you have left has to recover that. And it's very hard to do when you got another problem. You're also taking withdrawals at the same time. So all I can say is reducing shares month by month will make it very impossible to recover your portfolio in the long run. And you'll look back and you'll say, and you'll have a lot of regret because of the decisions you made, because you were hoping that growth was going to be in your corner. I'm going to be honest with you. I wish the markets would go up every year. It sure would make it a lot easier on all of us whenever, especially when I'm working with people when they're in retirement. What people want to know more than anything else is they want to be able to maintain their principal and while at the same time getting a certain amount of income to be able to cover their basic needs and also be able to enjoy their retirement years. But if you want to learn more about income first methods, I got an excellent book called The Retirement Income Store, written by CFA Dave Scranton. Now, I got a free copy for the first 5 callers of today's Retirement Income Source by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail that out to you if you're one of the first 5 callers. Free, no obligation book, 888-930-1080. You've been listening to the Retirement Income Source. I'm Tim Sparks, and we've came to the end of this show. Next week, we're going to actually start talking a little bit about estate planning. When I say estate planning, I'm going to share with you stories and such about why it's important to have a good, sound estate plan. I'm not an attorney, so I won't give you specific advice. All I will do is share with you stories, because I run across people all the time. They're sharing with me, especially when you do financial planning with people. There's always good and bad stories of things happen, and I'm thinking, okay, if they would have had this document or this will or this trust, they could have been okay, and they wouldn't have had to go through all of that. And so that's what a estate plan does. It makes sure that it distributes the assets the way you want them to be distributed. We appreciate you listening. We hope you learned a lot today. Keep in mind, maintain your principal. Thanks for listening. We'll talk again next week.